So today we're going to talk about comprehension. And comprehension is the last piece to our type 3 puzzle. And it's actually the hardest one to teach because it's very difficult to teach a child how to understand text. We can give them the strategies to do that, but comprehension as a whole is a very tricky piece of the puzzle. So what is comprehension? Well, comprehension is the act of constructing meaning with oral or written language. So constructing meaning with what's being taught in class versus words on the page. It's also the process of simultaneously extracting and constructing meaning. So in other words, comprehension is very complex. Comprehension in general is a growth construct. So how much have students grown versus a mastery construct, which is what score did they get on their test. It's strategies versus skills. So what strategies do students have to help them comprehend? It's development versus instruction. So we can have the best instruction in the world, but our students need to develop those strategies and comprehend for their own over time. And then instructionally, it's typically viewed as a product. Again, what score did they get on their test? 75% is passing. Are they proficient or advanced? Whereas comprehension is so much more than just the score on the summative assessment. So comprehension is an ever-changing process that's impacted by the knowledge, the background, the abilities of the reader. It's going to be influenced by the difficulty of the text. One text might be easy and it looks like they understand it. You give them a harder text and it's very clear that they don't. The task that's associated with the tests. If we're asking them very surface level questions, it's going to look like they understand what they've read. And the context in which the reading occurs. So did they read it silently? Did they read it with a partner? Did they read it at all? That's going to impact the comprehension. So there are 3 levels of understanding: surface level, base level, and situation model. So at a surface level, this is just that the students can read the words on the page. They can read sentence by sentence. They know the organization, beginning, middle, end, and they can typically answer very explicit questions. Who is the main character? What was the story about? Where did it take place? And many teachers assume that if students can answer these questions, they're comprehending, which really isn't true. At a surface level, they have yet to dig any deeper with the text. They can just give you very surface level things that they could probably just go back in the text and find on their own. So text-based is when the student is starting to understand the words and the meaning. They have an understanding of the ideas in the text. They're starting to be able to make inferences and draw conclusions on their own, but they're still stuck in the text. They haven't moved any further than going back in the text and finding an answer. The last level of comprehension is a situation model, and this is where comprehension of the text really takes place. So all of a sudden they're making personal connections. Maybe they're making historical connections. This event is a lot like this other event. They're making conceptual connections. They're looking at the deeper meaning of the text. What's the theme? What connections can they make? What response does the text invoke? I love when we read stories in class and at the end, my students are arguing with each other over the ending and whether they thought it was a good ending or not, or how they would have reacted in a similar situation. They've met that deep level of comprehension because they've gone past multiple choice questions of just simply what happened in the text. So here are some problems with strategy instruction. Are the strategies you're teaching producing positive results? So a lot of times we teach strategies to help students, but if they're not working, then we need to do something else. Strategies are vehicles that promote dialogue about text. So if your students aren't talking about the text, if they aren't able to formulate words about what they just read, they need some different strategies. Do the strategies produce flexible thinking? If they aren't able to flexibly use a strategy, if they have to do A and then B and then C, the strategy almost becomes mechanical. It's not helpful anymore. And is teaching of the strategies in a large group doable? So research has found little instruction of comprehension strategies is taking place in the classrooms because teachers find them hard to teach. They'll say, oh, well, they learned how to predict in reading class, so I don't need to teach them how to predict, which a lot of times they need that explicit instruction that says, hey, it's okay to predict in social studies, or it's okay to ask questions in science. So here are some principles of effective comprehension instruction, and this is kind of what comprehension should look like in your classroom. The goal of instruction should be to get students engaging with text at the deepest level. So we looked at talking to the text, we looked at closed reading. How are you getting students to engage with the text? They need time to talk about it and critically analyze what they read. They need to respond to the text in some form and not just multiple choice questions. This is kind of where that type 3 ties in. And then you should use student work to assess your instruction and guide future instruction. If you're giving them a ticket out the door or a type 3 and you go to read it and you see that there are some huge gaps in learning, you need to go back and make sure that those gaps are filled in. So here are some more effective instruction techniques for comprehension. Effective comprehension instruction focuses on developing strategic readers rather than just teaching the strategy. So how are your students able to use the strategies you're given to them in class? Students must learn that good readers use strategies flexibly and interchangeably. So don't always question or don't always predict. Show how you can use more than one at a time. Students should see strategies applied within a context of authentic reading in situations. I can't stress enough how much more engagement you will get from an authentic reading situation than just here's a news article with multiple choice questions. And then finally, modeling and thinking aloud, showing students how to use the strategies within the context of realistic, relevant text. So modeling for students, going up front and showing them how you would question or what predictions you would make about a text, and then gradually releasing that responsibility to them, having them sort of demonstrate the strategy back to you. So strategies and comprehension can be hard to teach because often we assume that students already have these tools, but by modeling to them what comprehension looks like and giving them opportunities to dig deeper with the text are ultimately going to help your students understand what they read a lot better.